And we're live. Let's bring down the microphone here. Well, good evening and welcome to another edition of the Jamaica Mix. And today, this evening, we have quite a bit of stuff that we want to cover. One topic primarily, but it's a big topic. And we have a special guest in studio this evening, none other than Mr. Winston Smith, sports journalist. Mr. Winston, let me give him all of him titling, all of the credentials. The Winston Smith, MBA, sports journalist. My friend from Camperdown days, so say how far where I come from. A man whose opinion I value, whose scholarship, whose contribution to the journalistic profession is legendary. And again, just want to use the opportunity to welcome Winston. Winston, welcome to the Jamaica Mix.
Thank you very much, Richard, and I appreciate the invitation. And as always, when we get to chop it up or mix it up, it's always a great thing. And
Absolutely.
this particular topic is near and dear to me, because as the host of the Sports Zone, with Aubrey Campbell, this is something that we've been diving in, and of course, the topic that we're going to talk about is the one that has rocked the track and field world and the Jamaican world track and field in particular, which
Absolutely.
is the raiding of the barn of our almost entire field events team that provided us with the medals at the last Olympics, and all that entails, Richard.
Absolutely. And listen, track and field is near and dear to the heart of every single Jamaican. If you follow the sport over the years, Jamaica has had more than a 73-year, history in terms of participation in international athletic competition.
From the 1940s with Irv McKinley and Arthur Wint.
Absolutely. 1948 Olympic Games. And so in the course of those 70-odd years, we have honed our reputation, honed and earned that reputation. However, in the last decade or thereabouts, we have started to see some slippage. Now, having said that, I think it is fair to put out there that what Jamaica has is a solid reputation. In fact, our reputation as one of the top track and field countries, certainly track countries in the world. And we're now seeing where, for different reasons, other countries are looking at what Jamaica has been doing. And not only are they looking now, what they're looking to do, as to use your term, Winston, is to raid the barn, right?
Let me sketch something out for them.
Yes.
All right. Jamaica is the sprint capital of the world. Brand Jamaica is the most vibrant and popular brand in track and field, as it now stands. So what we had the era of which starts with Merlin Ottey, but moves its way up to Shelley Fraser and Usain Bolt, Asafa Powell. But Jamaica has been at the helm of track and field along with the United States. So what we're looking at now, for example, is shoe companies are sending athletes to Jamaica from other countries, because several athletes from other countries, not just the Caribbean countries, but India and other places, are training in Jamaica. That's how big our program is. That the two primary coaches, Glenn Mills, our old coach, Richard from Camperdown, and Bolt's coach, and Stephen Francis up at MVP UTEC. Those are the individuals who have been driving this.
I wanted to say it again, people in the back here, right? Coaches from other shoe companies are sending. Go ahead.
They're sending athletes to Jamaica to be trained Toby Amasan,
Yeah.
the world record holder for the 100 meters hurdles, is training with Glenn Mills. Britain has Zanel Hughes, and albeit that he went to school in Jamaica, but he is signed to is a British subject who's running for Great Britain. So
And training in Jamaica.
and trains in Jamaica. The same Turkey that we're going to jump into, a lot of their athletes, including Andre Fisher, pretty much trains in Jamaica, even though he represents Turkey. So I'm saying this to say to folks that don't take it lightly what the Jamaican brand has accomplished in track and field. And with the last Olympics, where we saw the emergence of our field events, actually, it saved the day because most of the medals, majority of the medals that we got at the last Olympics, save one by Kashane Thompson, which is the silver medal in the 100 meters, was in the field
Field
events.
events. Correct.
So
Correct.
we are now seeing the emergence of a side of it that was never was not. We had sporadic. We had Beckford with the long jump and a few others, but for the and Trisha Smith with triple jump. But we've never been consistent. Now we've seen, and let me sketch it out for folks, Richard. Stoner,
Yeah.
first black man, first Jamaican to win the discus, and he's the Olympic champion as well, and Jamaica's champion. Then you have Roger Stoner, first Jamaican to win a shot put. I mean, to get a bronze medal in a shot put. So we're not talking about some, off the cuff thing or some potential. And of course, the young man that got the silver medal in the long jump.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about the emergence, and this was what was being discussed in the space. The emergence of now broadening the brand Jamaica in track to include field. So no, what happened? We'll get into that later on as we get into the program. We'll see the significant thing because it's a major body blow to Jamaica track and field.
Let's step back a little bit because people may not necessarily, people may be asking the question, why other countries, as we use the term, raiding the bar? No, first of all, remember this is not the first time because what's his name? Brother, the Gleaner journalist there, the what's his name? Who the why am I having to see them? His brother was a hurdler and he went to I think he went to Saudi Arabia. Um
But
uh,
you're also talking about Jermaine Greer, who represented Jamaica and then went to the
and,
Olympics on behalf of Great Britain
right.
and got a silver medal.
I think people are better able to digest an athlete moving from Jamaica to England or what's her name, Sanya Richards,
To the
who
United
had
States.
left and gone to the United States. That is the more palatable move that people seem to be able to deal with. The issue seems a little bit more garish, frightening, if you will, when you're looking at athletes going to far off places, Bahrain, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, etc., etc., and countries that are not normally recognized in the within the Olympic movement, within the sphere where we discuss track and field at
Right. They're
Olympics
not
and
track
World
and field
Championships.
powers, world
Right.
powers.
So, what would be the reason why these countries are now trying to recruit Jamaicans?
All right. The recruiting process is not new. Some years ago, several Jamaicans sought to be recruited by some of these countries, and that's one of the reasons why the rules were tightened up for a 3 year span. If you're transferring immediately after that happened, several Jamaican athletes
Mhm.
wanted to transfer. I'll tell you why, and I'm going to give you Turkey in particular. Turkey, the official in the Turkish Olympic Association that was spoken to said, we're trying to build a brand for our country for track and field because it is not popular in our country. We realize the importance of the flag flying at an Olympic event and even a World Championship event with a gold medal. They have been recruiting folks for some time. The most successful that comes to mind is Rudolf Goriev, who won the 200 meters at the World Championship in 2019. But what has happened here is they have decided that they're going to go in the direction of the field events, and they went after the cream of the crop of the last Olympics, which just happens to be Jamaica. So that's one of the reasons. The second, they want to use this particular exercise of Turkey having its flag flown at the Olympics and winning medals as an inspiration to the youngsters in Turkey, so that they can now start seeing the possibility of becoming Olympic and world champions in track and field. So that's kind of the thought process. Because when this thing happened, Richard, a lot of my friends and people in the space that I was talking to and were saying to me, then Jamaica is going to become a farm
A
team
feeder.
for, yeah,
Yeah.
a feeder farm team. And what is going to happen? Are they going to come after our young prospects? Because of course, Jaden Hibbert, who is not really a prospect, because had he not been injured, he would have. I'm convinced he would have medaled at the last Olympics. But what he said in effect is this is a national program that we're trying to build, and one of the reasons we will not, we are only interested in people who have been successful at the Olympics, is that we do not want to blight or dispirit our youngsters. Because if we start going after youngsters and young prospects, what are our Turkish youngsters who want to be in track and field going to think if we're bringing youngsters in? So they want to use the success
Established. uh, uh, yeah,
established
established
Olympic
athletes.
artists
Yeah.
and to build the brand and build the flag and build the pride so that they can establish the program in Turkey. And that's why they're doing what they're doing. And they've made it plain that they're not coming after the Jamaican
Well,
prospects.
but from my information, while it supports some of what you just said, it is apparent that they're not just locking in on just field events, right?
Hmm.
I was on a couple of other programs like this earlier on today, and I think what is happening is the 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 the, the scouts, if you will,
Hmm.
recognize that Jamaica has a phenomenal program, even though Jamaica no seem to know how phenomenal the program is. It said that's the kind of feedback I'm getting.
Hmm.
People are saying the Jamaicans love track and field, big track and field country, but for their impact, it is apparent that the policymakers have not put the kind of investment in to maximize the benefit, the value that comes from the prowess that them have. And so, for example, a couple of the athletes who do well. So you have a Usain Bolt who is a world class, out of this world in terms of his ability. Everybody know that. There are Asafas, that group that came out of the 2008 to 2016 era.
Hmm.
We're producing these artists, but behind them, there's a whole plethora of potential world beaters.
Let
And
me say,
for whatever the reason, it does seem as if the country understand where them have. Go ahead.
well, I think part of the problem is that they have not prioritized track and field as a national industry that they need to invest in and develop. And I think the leading organization, not so much the Jamaica Olympic Association, but the
The
J3A,
J3.
lacks the vision. One of the reasons for what happened recently is the fact that a lot of the athletes and coaches in Jamaica are quite upset with the J3A for that Puma contract that they took, that they hid and signed. Did not, to this day, have not had an announcement that they re-signed with Puma. Did not tell us, and still have yet to tell us what was in that contract. Now, let me sketch it for the public who might not understand. The person who did the Adidas offered a contract, incentive laden contract, one of the best I've ever seen. In terms of the stages of development in Jamaican track and field, it was far better than what Puma had in place. When that contract came out, and interestingly enough, the person who wrote the Puma contract is the person who left and went and wrote the Adidas contract. And he made sure he made it better. When that contract was made public, it was in newspapers, it was discussed in spaces and discussed in sports programs. What was missing is that the Jamaica Amateur Athletic Administration did not say a word, did not tell the public anything, had no meetings, nothing to tell us what was being offered and why they turned that contract. And I'm told that several coaches in Jamaica and athletes were pissed, including Roger Stoner and a bunch of others, when they saw the what they did and how they did it. So I think some of the institutional forms that you're talking about, Richard, is what the problem is. They have not stepped up to the plate. Jamaica is a first world track and field country and a fourth world administrative at some levels,
Well,
and at the main driving level of the J3A, because they're the driving force.
all right. So we talk about the J3A, and let's step back a little bit because some of the feedback that I picked up earlier today as well spoke to problems that athletes had. And I had a conversation with an individual that is familiar to both yourself and I. And she was explaining that maybe it is a case where the administrators are not recognizing that there's a sort of a diametric shift in terms of not just the results, but the expanding depth of our participation in global athletics. So meaning the field events are now coming through definitely, right? As Ray on YouTube, I just want to welcome the people on YouTube and on Facebook who's joining us, who says the signing of these contracts should no longer be left to the J3A alone. Excellent point, Ray. We're gonna pick that up as we go along. But this individual made a point that when you go to these international meets, because we have had the tradition of developing or presenting track athletes. These athletes are bringing their coaches along, or the coaching component is lacking, and we saw that at the last Olympic Games when this young lady, the high jumper, who
and the shot putter, Thomas
yeah,
Dodd, both of them.
They said both of them said that had they had their coaches with them, the results would have been dramatically different, because in those events you need the input of I guess that's how that part of the sports work, where that technical input, where the coach just little fine tuning.
Let me put a fine point on that. Usain Bolt used to say, once Coach Mills tell me something, I trust him implicitly.
Right.
And I say that to say this: our athletes' performance is significantly impacted, good or bad, by their confidence in their coaches, and they're necessary. And as Dodd pointed out, I needed my coach at every step to make sure that what I was doing was correct. So I think, without beating a dead horse with that, folks have to understand that enough coaches weren't sent. Well, I don't want to rehash what happened last year.
It's germane to the discussion, because one of the problems that what was coming out of the conversation is that a lot of the athletes, particularly the non-track athletes, felt that they were shortchanged. There was one girl who made the qualifying thing, and for whatever the reason, the J3A never picked her up. And then
you're talking about the jab, the hammer thrower.
Yeah, right.
Clunis, yes.
So they were, now keep in mind that these youngsters, and I want to put it out there, that typically in sports, especially these kind of intensive sports, an athlete's timeline as a participant in the sport is only for a few years, 5 to 7 years at a maximum. Now, we may have the situation with a Bolt and a Shelley and etc., who have been, on the track for 10, 12 years, but they are exceptions, right? So
Mm-hmm.
when you get an athlete who is working for a year, 2 years to prepare for a global championship, and then for whatever the reason, because somebody dropped the ball somewhere, the athlete made the qualifying mark, but something slipped, right? What
What
you're
happened?
doing is demoralizing the athlete. Go ahead.
What the shelf life of an athlete is fairly short. 3 to 5 years,
Right.
right? And sometimes not that much, and depending on how you're handled and managed, and how your career evolves. So what tends to happen is that athletes want to have the best set of circumstances so that they can produce their optimum. What I think has been missing, and we saw it I saw an interview some years ago with Danielle Williams where she complained that she couldn't get help, and we talked, she couldn't get the kind of assistance she needed. When Roger Stoner, and I watched the interview last night because I knew I was coming on today, and he talks about it. Roger Stoner won an Olympic gold medal. He
And
said
set
set
an
up
Olympic record.
record,
Yeah.
and he's the current defending champion. And he's saying, I live in the United States and I see where they have a two-tier system where the elite athletes get certain things and the ones that are going to have the potential to rise in terms of how they're treated. And he said that was one of the reasons because he doesn't see where brand Jamaica was leveraged so that people could get endorsements, because they're not asking the J3 or the other organizations to give them money, even though, and we can I'll talk about this because I've interviewed uh, the president of the Jamaica Olympic Association, who's putting up millions of dollars in preparatory and rewards, because he's going to have an award after the 2028 Olympics, and the people who have stood out will get significant prize monies. But what I'm saying is, he's saying you're not making any preparations for me that I can then leverage it and
To
make
go,
money
right,
beyond
right.
beyond track and field, the way say a Usain Bolt has. And people are upset about that. They're not upset that you don't you're not necessarily things happen, because things happen in track and field. What they want to see is some form of vision, some form of institution
I don't know what happened. Go ahead. I lost your audio there for a second. Um, check your microphone. All right. And while Winston do that, just wanna thing. Yeah, Winston, your microphone. You may have muted your mic at your end. Um, because it's not. I can't unmute it. Yeah, it's a your mic is not connected, so you might want to just um clock out and clock back in. Clock out and clock. In the meantime, let me just think. All right. So while we wait on Winston to rejoin us, I know a lot of people out there may wanna come in. Let me see what Ray is saying here. Yeah, that he's making an excellent point. I agreed, Ray. And we're gonna bring him back. Just a little technical glitch here. Here is Winston. Winston? What is going on here? Yeah. All right. So um as Ray is pointing out that it's an absence of vision, and I am inclined to agree with you on that, Ray. It is clear that the people that we have who are administering our sport is lacks that vision, right? And so this is a part of the problem that is strafing us. Now, the let me bring Winston. What the hell is going on? Yeah, it can't figure out what it is. It's your microphone, Winston. It's an unmute microphone. Can't unmute your mic. Is It's apparent that your microphone is not connected. Oh, you there? Thought I'd gotten you back a while ago. All right, we're just going to sort that out in the meantime. But now one of the problems that we seem to have with the way how we administer the sport is that we the people who are running the J3 seems to be detached from the way how the sport is administered themselves. And this is essentially I think Winston, maybe what you want to do is call in on the line. Let me give you the call-in number because I don't want to lose. I need you to be part of this conversation here. Let me just give you the number. Who is this, Pamela? Let me give you the number. It's 954. Come on. Hold on. 954-274-8177. Call me. You can call in on that number because I'm losing you. 954. And let me.
You get it?
Yeah.
Get it? Yeah. Okay.
All right. So
I'm here.
back on the telephone, and we're gonna continue the conversation now. Reverton Bailey, who is on Facebook, says, since Barnes and Harvey were recruited by the Turks, what has happened in the sport to prevent a recurrence or to change the dynamics of the situation? You want to take that, Winston?
Yes, I will. Yes, I will. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Hearing you loud and clear.
Okay. What I don't know that anything has happened. Let me explain it how it works. The fact that these youngs were taken. Oh, we're getting feedback. We're taken. I don't think there's anything you can do to stop it. If you understand the rules of the game, is that you can transfer within a 3-year window, and transfer or change allegiance, switch allegiance is something that you can do. And there's some very strict rules on it that you have to wait for 3 years. You have to get residency. You have to have some connection to the country, and all of that can be taken care of. So I don't know that you can necessarily stop it from happening, Richard. Hello?
Yes, and to that point, here is I know for a lot of Jamaicans and a lot of fans of the sport who, for whatever the reason, may or may not be as informed in terms of how the thing works, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of the issue that I know is strafing people is the whole idea of Jamaican athletes who have proven themselves, who are going, basically abandoning the black, green, and gold for other colors. Now, let me make this point here. For me and you live in North America, and we left Jamaica for clear reasons, personal advancement, self-development, and a better ability in this landscape in the diaspora to develop yourself. That is something that we have been doing as Jamaicans for decades, right? So when an athlete who is a professional, who don't see an opportunity within the Jamaican sphere to develop in a way that them can see a future down the road after the couple of years as an athlete is available to them. we shouldn't be trying to crucify these athletes because they're doing no different than what
Let
we
me
have
say
all
this.
done. Yeah.
Hundreds of Jamaican athletes take track scholarships every year, come to the United States, and use those track scholarships. They run, they meet the requirement, and then they go on to very promising careers in regular fields, lawyers, doctors, engineers, psychologists, you name it, right? It is a means to an end. To an athlete who decides to stay in the sport, it is instead of him becoming a lawyer or a doctor or a teacher or a psychologist, he is now an athlete. That's how he pays his bills. That is how he plans his future. So what you're looking forward to is how do I now monetize this that I can have a future? The advent of what we've seen in Jamaica, where a number of our athletes have brought us glory, and we had to have had GoFundMe to bury them because they died in poverty. What these youngsters are saying is we're not going to put ourselves in that position. We're going to know now that we're hot, we're going to maximize our potential, and we're going to make sure we secure our future. No, and get me, I'm a patriot, Richard, and I understand how people feel about when you abandon your country. I remember when back in the days when a lot of my friends wanted to become citizens, they anguished about it, got a sense of guilt and betrayal. We understand that. What I am saying to the people who are critical of these folks, the other day when one of the athletes was having some problems, and I won't call the athlete's name, how many of these critics, Richard, went for a GoFundMe to help? Clueless. Did they go for a GoFundMe to help her to get to the Olympics last year? Because J3 didn't have the money, and she didn't have the money. She tried. This what I'm saying is before we start criticizing people, Richard, what are we doing to help them? Because the problem is that they're not getting it at a certain level. But yet, as soon as they make a decision that we don't like, that because for whatever reason we criticize them, and honestly, we've all come here seeking a better life and trying to get set our future properly. Why shouldn't athletes be allowed the same right?
I, I
That is
think
the question.
I think a lot of people misunderstand that this is, for the fan who is looking at athletics in terms of its entertainment value and
Mhm.
its the impact it has on the energy generated in the country during the
Mhm.
athletic season. They're seeing it from the perspective of providing entertainment and this feel good thing for
Mhm.
the nation. The trouble is that in order for us to feel good, these athletes are busting them chops 7 days a week, multiple upon multiple hours a day in training and preparation. And for the majority of them, they have a paucity of resources with which to do that. And so when somebody come to you and say, all right, we can go back to Roger Stoner with the argument about the second level athletes. Because as I said, I spoke to somebody today and they made the same argument that track athletes are represented at a level above the field event athletes. The problem is that we are now in a situation where it is our field event athletes that is carrying the ball, right? And what happened is somebody apparently published a little blurb on social media that said what particular countries is what is presented to athletes who win medals at, say, the Olympic Games, right? And I
Mhm.
mean, a tongue-in-cheek kind of a thing. But they say for this particular country, you win a gold medal, you get 200,000 US dollars. Down
Okay.
at Jamaica,
Let me address that.
down at Jamaica, what the athlete get is 2 hug from Babsy Grange and 2 kids,
That's
right?
funny. But let me be blunt. I have the table for Turkey. The signing bonus was at a minimum 500,000 US dollars.
At a
But if you
minimum,
win a gold medal,
hold on, at a
that's the
minimum,
minimum.
yes.
But when you get a gold medal for Turkey, you're going to get $575,000
if you win a gold medal for Turkey.
when you win a gold medal.
Plus the $500,000 that you get.
And we're not talking about the stipend that you get monthly, the kind of services that and support services that you have. Now, to be fair, as I said earlier in my commentary, when I interviewed the president of the Jamaica Olympic Association, he has put aside a couple $1 million to provide some of that for athletes going in, but this is specifically for going into the Olympics, not the World Championship or all the other events that we're Jamaica participate, just the Olympics.
Right.
And then he said, we're going to provide it at different stages for them for their development, and that is within Jamaica. When they win, we will have an award show where we will give monetary awards and awards to people who have distinguished themselves. Now, that is a recognition, for one, that you have done something for the country, and we are thankful for it. Two, here is some financial reward. That some of that took place last time round. It wasn't a lot of money. It was $1 million. I think it went to some people. But the point he's making is we're moving in that direction, but that's for the Olympics. So I'll give you an example. When they raided the barn, they went to the Olympic silver medalist, Shanika Ricketts. She's a triple jumper. And she turned it down. She lives in Jamaica. She trains in Jamaica. Her husband is a coach, and she turned it down. Now, when you look at that, you say to yourself, okay, so she's going to now receive something. And I think she was one of them who received something from the Jamaican Olympic Association from what she did. So what I'm saying is some things have been put in place to help, but not enough is being done. And you said something to me when we were talking off mic before we got on the air about something that the Minister of Tourism said. And I think it's important that you share that with the public as to why people feel the way they do about track and field. Athletes feel the way they do.
I want to go beyond that, because this is, first of all, between track and field and Jamaican music, right? These are two fields that are being participated in
Brand Jamaica
by our young people. First of all, let me just welcome people joining on Facebook. Alva Smith, Opal Martin, Opal Morris Powell, Roberton Bailey. Just wanna get a big shout out there. Now, and Alva, the money is in Jamaica is Jamaican dollars. So, but let's come back. So, if you remember, Chronix had an argument, that a long-running thing between himself and, at the time, the Minister of Culture, who was Lisa Hanna, right? And Chronix's argument was that for all of the way Jamaica big up music and reggae music, there is nowhere in Jamaica where you can go listen to some music as a personal visit, or even if you live in Jamaica, there's nowhere you can go you can have a live show. The Jamaican have no facility that allows people to come out in the evening and go sit down and listen to some live music or whatever. The Minister of Tourism is on record. Last year, I remember, some issue came up where they were talking about some fest and so on. And the minister said that the government, this administration, is not interested in being involved in the business of creating those kind of facilities. In other words, for him, the people who in the music business must put up the money, but they are quite happy to take the credit, to laud the music and jump up and down. We use Bob Marley, One Love as the advertising for the Jamaica Tourist Board, but most Jamaicans now recognize that between up to 1976. Bob Marley music could have barely play up on the radio station because Bob Marley is deemed to be a dirty Rasta boy, right?
So I think what it is this, Richard.
The same principle that applies to the music is what is what is applicable to the track and field thing. Our administrators pay lip service to the young people, but puts no tangible investment in to develop these platforms that highlights the abilities of our youngsters. Back over to you.
Let me say this where that is concerned. I think you're onto something when you talk about the lack of seriousness in terms of creating an ecosystem. And this is something you, myself, and Dennis Howard and others have talked about, where when it comes to a serious investment in the music. But in track and field, what we're seeing is that Jamaica is a first world country in terms of athletics, and a third or fourth world country at some levels when it comes to the administrative. And there's a lack of vision. There is no sense that this is a national treasure that we need to invest in and do R&D with research and development and best practices and so forth. When you think, for example, the National Stadium, it was open, what, in 62, 64, somewhere thereabout?
It was built in
that stadium,
between 1957 and 1961. Opened in 1962.
Right, but my point is, one of the reasons we do not have a diamond league, how can you be the sprint capital of the world, equal to the United States and sometimes ahead of it, and you don't have a stadium that meets international requirements, that we can't get a diamond league there, we can't get a continental league. Recently, when Michael Johnson went there, we had to have a company come in and do a sort of a makeover job at the stadium.
Pace a track on the existing track. That's what they do.
What I'm saying is there is no real serious investment in sports, but they want to benefit from it. And I think that's problematic. There needs to be some leadership. There needs to be some vision, and they need to look at exactly what we have and how to best harness it. Not just benefit from the brand. I think of Sunsplash. I remember talking to a couple of the gentlemen who did it, and they told us that it was like pulling teeth trying to get support from the government and finances and so forth. But they wanted the hotels filled, and they wanted the benefits of tourism. Well, what we're seeing in track and field to some degree, some of it is changing, and I won't pretend that some of it isn't changing. But what we're seeing to a large degree is that they want the results. They want to be able to go out front and say and take the credit for it, but they don't want to invest and do the necessary things. When Usain Bolt says he had to go to a championship and pay out of his own pocket, that's embarrassing. I heard him on the fix say that.
Yeah, but again, part of the problem, and I say a couple of people saying that here on the Facebook side of the thing, that Jamaica's problem is a lack of leadership. For example, let's take this point that one of the Mr. Smith on Facebook is raising this point. The guy who is the president of the J3A right now, with all of this thing boiling up around him and around the sport in Jamaica, because this is an embarrassment to Jamaica, whether people want to accept it. Yes,
but it is,
right?
It is, Richard. There is no whether people believe it or not, because we're not in our little silo. We're in the global stage where we're judged by the same standard as everybody else.
Absolutely. And so instead of trying to address the issue that is in front of him, what Gail is saying is that him don't get no paperwork from none of these, but regarding any of these 2 or 4 people that is leaving. The reality is that the damn thing is a done deal. And instead of focus on, in other words, you're trying to play down the development rather than look at how do we put some strategies in place. What are we calling a brainstorming session together then because this is happening in real time.
But let me say this. What is missing is relationships by his organization to the clubs, to the athletes, to the athlete management. Because this should never have happened, and they get caught at the back end of it. And now, after it's done, things are signed, press releases are out, you're coming to say, I don't know about it. How can you be the chief administrative body for these types of events, for track and field in Jamaica? This is happening right under your nose in Jamaica. It didn't happen abroad. It happened in Jamaica. And you don't know, you're saying, because they have a century in the paperwork,
Well, that seemed to be the angle that he is prepared to address this thing from, which for me is it is a representation of him not willingly coming to terms with the factor of what is happening in front of him. It is not a case that we can say is a speculation. This is a fact, right? A fact that is happening in real time. Now I notice Juliet Cuthbert Flynn, who has essentially come out and put her own 2 cents worth in this thing. And there was a Gleaner report today where she said here, following reports that a number Cuthbert Flynn said questions should be raised regarding the individuals who have been charged with leading Jamaica sports administrators. Now, I will say to you, I'm not a big fan of Cuthbert Flynn, but in terms of her ability, her demonstrated, she has represented the country in 4 Olympic Games, right? As and represented us very, very well. What it seems that is lacking, because based on some of the pointers she raised in this article, she said is that the mindset of the people who are running the sport, and should we look at the people who are running the sport, and is it that they have the interest at heart for the athletes? In other words, there is a sense that the people who are running the sports in the country are in it for themselves and not for the sport itself or the athletes. Your part, to you.
Let me say this. Cuthbert Flynn, this is not the first time she's weighed in on this issue, by the way. She did it about, I think, sometime last year or the year before. But
during the Olympic Games. Yeah.
This is a woman who has come up with suggestions. This is an athlete who knows from which he speaks. Asafa Paul, who got vilified, skewered, and barbecued and crucified for saying what happened. Now that this has happened, he's looking like a prophet. But what I'm saying is this. She has been somebody who has been willing. She's offered her services. She's offered to come in and be a consultant and help them. None, that it's not been taken. So when she speaks, people should listen, because from what Cuthbert Flynn speaks, she knows exactly what she's talking about. The fact of the matter is simply this. The contract that I spoke of earlier, the Puma contract versus the Adidas contract, speaks very clearly to what she's talking about. The interest of the athlete versus the interest of some other special interest people.
Yeah, but
I think we need to overhaul some of our institutions. One of my friends said to me, our classmates from Camperdown, won't call him name because I don't like to be in public, said we should just fire everybody and start over.
Yeah, but here's a question, because again, back to Cuthbert Flynn. Here's my sense. Where she, I mean, she's an MP and whatever, but maybe her best ability to serve Jamaica is in this area, because she has been there.
And this is what I'm saying, and that's why she's weighed in, because she comes with a credibility that many others won't have, because she's been there, she knows. But my problem is, when she volunteered, they did not take her up on it. And I've heard too many stories of people who have wanted to do things like that and come in and help that have been shut out. So I think now that this is earth-shaking thing has hit the administrators, the ball is in their court. Let's see what they're doing. Let's see how they're gonna handle this. Because I tell you this, and we talked about this before we got on here, Richard. I'm reading that there are athletes who approached the Turkish folks,
yes,
and they said, and they turned them down because they were not Olympic or World Championship medalists. And I'm told that these folks are waiting to go to trial. And when they perform well at trial, and if they go to World Championship, they then are going to seek help elsewhere. Now, if that is true, I can't confirm it, but this was said in the article that I read, it was reported. And I'm saying this, if that is the case,
they have a bigger problem on their hands than they realize.
And
And the question is, are they prepared to deal with it? How are they prepared to deal with that at all?
if the response from the president of the J3A today, well, I don't know, it may have been yesterday that he made it, but I saw it today. If his response is anything to go by, I am going to say it's going to be a very long summer for the whole of it. Because, as one person here on social media pointed out, Mr. Smith said, we are going to start losing a lot more of our natural resources, just like track and field, because of poor leadership. And that leadership issue in respect of track and field falls at the feet of the president and the executive of the Jamaica Amateur Athletics Association. I care what I call it, J3A, right? Until we recognize that we have a problem. First of all, athletes going to international events without coaches, that's a no-no, right? That is a no-no. Whatever you need to do to provide the additional coaching spaces to provide for them, because some of these athletes don't even need the J3A to cover the athletes' cost, because them are professional athletes. What they want is accreditation, right? My information is that a lot of this the J3A delegation that go with them at these international meetings, wife, brother, daughter, son, everybody is accredited so that them can be all over the place, right? So if we serious, we have to do a complete overhaul of how we administer the sport, where the focus is on the athletes and not the administrators. Because when you listen to some of the critique that is raised against the J3A, it almost as if people are talking to the wall, because these people could care less what the athletes complete.
I'll raise something with you. In January of this year, after I was part of a forum on Jamaicans.com with Professor Wilkes and his brother, and I think Ed Barnes came in at the end, and a bunch of others, where we critique what happened at the Olympics last year. And I raised that because there was never any post-mortem of what took place at the Olympics. There was never accounting afterwards by the requisite organizations. We heard the stories, lack of air condition, Shelley not getting access to training, and a bunch of other problems and issues that took place. And nobody, and I mean nobody from the official organization, came out and said, listen, this is what happened. Going forward, this is how we're going to. There is clearly no post-mortem that is done after an Olympics or a World Championship to say, let's move forward. And these are the issues that we have, but we are going to address it. And the lack of transparency with some of these organizations is what is problematic for me, because you can't get information. You cannot.
I want to speak to, because let's say where Sean Garrity made a comment here, because that's not what we're talking. Sean Garrity said we really expect a third world country to sponsor and support athletes beyond having a facility and a national championship. That's not what we're saying here. Maybe you come in and
it's a good question.
No, it's a good comment, but that's not the issue that we are discussing here. We are not even. That's not even what we are suggesting here. The argument about J3 and the coaches is with respect to those athletes who would have required their coaches, the accreditation. If they're asking J3 to finance their coaches, what they were asking for was the accreditation. And we were told.
Let me put a pin in that. Glenn Mills,
yeah,
with that same question of accreditation last year, said he got offers
to be with the
from foreign countries to get accreditation when it was when these people were dilly-dallying. So the point I'm making, Sean, and we're trying to make, is that we're not expecting you to act like you have all the resources, but we're expecting at least some amount of proficiency. We've been doing this long enough, and we understand how this system works and how to navigate it. And the fact of the matter is, we're not doing that.
I think
That
hold on. Let me help you if I may come in here, because I think what is absent in this kind of comment is the lack of professionalism is the issue, right? The way we run the J3A, based on all of the comments and the criticisms that have been aired since the lead up to the Olympic Games last year and even now, is that these guys are a law unto themselves. It's not about the athletes. Most of the athletes complain about the treatment, about the thing. There are some who complain about not having the funding. But the reality is we spend a lot of money in Jamaica on track and field outside of the, for example, the school championships, which the between the sponsors and so on, you are looking at over $3-4 billion spent to host a school championship, right? And when you look at the returns for it, if you were to look at it in terms of return on investment, you get a very poor return. But even with the paucity of the return, what the championships yield in terms of talent, we're not providing them with the support to get them to the next level. And a big part of that is where the unprofessionalism shows up. Over to you.
I'll say this. One of the problems, and we've seen it come out in the lack of transition from the same level that you're talking about at the high school level to the senior level. That's been an issue that we've been trying, that has bedeviled Jamaican track and field for the longest. As a matter of fact, most of the athletes that are shining in track and field did not do well at champs.
They're not big stars at champs, absolutely.
Okay, from a Safa on down. So I'm saying that to say that we need to now look at how, if we can get them to start looking at it. I'd like to say I'm hopeful that they will look at how they're administrating and where they can improve. If they make mistakes, and mistakes get made because that's what organizations do, and they're teachable moments, and this is how you learn going forward. I am looking at them and wondering, this particular issue, it is going to be instructive to see, one, how they address it, two, what they do about it, three, and most importantly, how transparent they are with the public about what the issues are and how they're going about it. That is what I think is necessary here.
And while you're talking about transparency, let's go back, because we are now almost a year since the Paris Olympic Games, right? One would imagine that an important event like that has national profile, that at least the governing body for the sport would publish their own assessment of the Jamaica's participation, and you make recommendations for, you put some recommendations that you are going to be following to ensure that we have a better outturn for the next global track meet. But as far as I have observed, I can't even really remember this happening with any previous administration or the J3A. So if one wonders if we're asking too much of them, or who does these people report to, who they work for.
I think that has been an issue that I've heard raised, and I think it's valid. They're not answerable to anyone but themselves.
But who pay them?
Because there is that. I'm told it's volunteer work. There is no. I think it's time we got some sort of a executive board or some committee that has some standards by which the results are judged. Because like any other thing, you've got to have best practices, but you've got to have competencies that measure results. And Jamaica got by with Shelley and Fraser and leading the women charge and Elaine and Usain leading the charge. A lot of the cracks that were there in the system that needed to be addressed and fixed got covered over by the success. And as long as the success was there, nobody was paying attention to it. Now that that veneer, that coverage has been removed, all of that has risen to the top. And I think that's where the problem lies. They're not ready to deal with it. They're not prepared to deal with it. And that's where we are now, Richard.
Well, listen, we're running out of time, but I wanna think. As Carl Wilson said on YouTube, there just should be government oversight. I am not necessarily into this business of too much government in terms of, and I believe government should lay down the blueprint, if you will. The thing is what we need is transparency, and the transparency is just not there, right? This guy here, Sean, just posted this. Let me just share with the people.
I'm seeing.
Yeah, him say, Cham says an ISA event, yet copious amounts of money is spent on that highly inefficient annual event by alumni and sponsors. What if we redirected some of that into a national league? And then there is this. Jamaican athletes have been lamenting on lack of funding, yet with 11 events at GST recently, and only 3 athletes ran in the Jamaican leg to win at least $10,000 US dollars. A pretty good point. I think this is a topic we can't exhaust all of it. Sean raised a good point there. I have always maintained that Champs is an inefficient use of private sector money. But Grace Kennedy have a whole heap of money, and them, it's free advertising for them, even with the money where them spend. But for the returns that we get out of Champs, it's an inefficient use of money. I'm not saying we must done with Champs, but I wish if at least a third of the money we're spending at Champs would have spent on the academic side and develop the academic side of these youngsters. But that's a whole different story.
I want to say this, Richard, because our trials, our national trials, before we go, our national trials are coming up. Yeah. This Friday. That's this coming Friday.
This coming Friday, right.
And Dr. Bolden, who knows a thing or two about track and field, has made the prediction that Jamaica is going to have a low medal count. And we've been having a low medal count for some time. Yeah, the question now becomes, how does, given what has happened with the body blow of the raiding of our proverbial field barn,
yeah.
What is going, if we have a low medal count, are we still the sprint capital of the world? Are we still the premier power?
We're not the sprint capital of the world. That is a self-proclaimed position.
Well, no, a lot of major news organizations are that. But I'm saying, have we lost the prominence? Is really the
no. Well, let me answer. Because I don't need Dr. Bolden to ask me and tell me that. We lose that from 2000. We lost that, and 17? Then in 2017 was when the crack started to appear. We had some recovery on the women's side at the last Olympic Games in Japan, right? But since Japan, we got on a bush. So we're not a sprint capital of the world. The question though is, we were there, so we know what we need to do. What we are going back to, and Sean just made the point here, it's not a low medal. We'll go back to where we were prior to 2004, right? And I am saying to you, I'll put it out there, I don't see Jamaica having this truckload of medal that we had gotten accustomed to between 2008, and we can't even go back to 2004 up to 2016. It's not gonna happen. I don't see it in the foreseeable future with all of these youngsters that we're boasting and all of that. It's not gonna happen, right? And so what we are going to what is going to happen is it's going to test the mettle of Jamaicans and just how loyal they were to the sport, or they are to the sport, in the period where we go back to the basics, where you win a couple of medals, etc. And more importantly, the private sector who takes so much from the sport but gives so little, right? So, and I want to come back to one final question we wrap up on. The, this business of athletes jumping the fence to go elsewhere is, I know it's been happening for a while. We saw it all the way back with Merlin Otti and a couple of others who have, been going on this road. Is it a case where these youngsters now recognize them have the ability and can get the kind of support that will raise their performances to optimum level if the resources are put into their thing? And will they become more amenable to taking up some of these offers when they come to them? Your thoughts?
I'll say this on that. I think the youngsters are not accepting of what the status quo is. That much is clear. So my suspicion is, if there isn't a raising of the bar some more, then you're going to see people do that.
Raising of the bar in terms of what? In terms of
support.
Oh, okay.
In terms of support for them, and provide. The other thing I would love to see them do is to go to having athletes getting endorsements, because that's something that athletes will work with. I mean, you look at a Shelley Fraser Price, and you look at a Usain Bolt and a Elaine Thompson and a Johan Blake, all of whom have endorsements and making money. I think we need to start leveraging some of that, because I think Sean is right. We don't have the money to pay the way a Turkey does, because we're not awash with petrodollars. And our private sector has not stepped up, and I'm not sure that they could even compete at that level, because these people have a lot of money. But that's not the only way you leverage track and field. You can help to secure them. And what I'd love to see our private sector do, instead of coming in on the back end after our athletes have been successful and use them for promotional purposes by inviting them to hotels and giving them private stays and all the rest of the things that they do, start identifying some of these athletes and start providing the kind of support as they are developing into proteges, to giving them the necessary support as they go along. In other words, identifying youngsters, just like American coaches come and identify youngsters that they want from champs to
in their college program. Yeah, it's a college
program.
Right.
Why can't the private sector start to look at primary school and other schools and look at them and say, okay, this is an athlete. How can we provide them with nutrition, vitamins?
Yeah, but
meals, that kind of thing.
But here's the catch side of that, because that's just one aspect of the development. The reality is, and Sean made the argument here about Jack Harvey, who had gone to Turkey in the days of the Usain Bolt, etc., and he actually won a world champ, got into a final and hold the Turkish sprint record. I believe that there's nothing wrong that if Jamaicans see themselves as having the ability to go all the way, but not being able to make that connection within the Jamaican environment
and space,
and in the Jamaican space, I don't have no problem with people going elsewhere, because as far as I'm concerned, you're still a Jamaican, right?
I'm gonna humor you with this.
But before you humor me, I want to drive home. One of the ways that Jamaicans contribute to the development of the home country is by, plowing their own personal resources back into the country. You don't have to earn that money in Jamaica, right? You those of us who live in the diaspora here and who have family and connections and businesses back in Jamaica, you send the money, go and reinvest there, either in your family, I think. And so there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. If that is the role that we are going to have to play, then so be it. Because Jamaica will never be able to get up and say, we can pay an athlete $500,000 as a sign-on bonus, right? That's never gonna happen, right? And so
Not American dollars anyway.
but if it's not American dollars and no dollars, right? So if that is what we are up against, I mean, you know, believe me, listen, loyalty can't carry go a shop. No matter what anybody I tell you, boy, if you're loyal to your country, that bull crap. Because when you pick me sick or can't go to school or you can't buy gas put in your car, you can't tell anybody, say, boy, you know, some other gold medal winner or a silver medalist in the Olympics. That no mean nothing, right? You need to leverage your ability to generate income for yourself that you can put your family and yourself in a position where you have financial security. And if that is what we have to do for our youngsters, well, me I go tell them good luck. Me I give you all blessings and good wishes. Because ultimately what we want is to see our Jamaican youth them prosper. Over to you.
Let me say this quickly. My friend, and I'm not calling his name, Cliff Quarry, when we talk, Cliff said to me in 2012, Stan, we're going to see at some point, given the talent pool that we have in Jamaica, lining up for the Olympics, we may see that of 9 countries, 7 might be headed by Jamaica with different flags.
Yes.
And so, and I make that point as in jest, but here's what it really means. It simply means that
we are
the talent pool that we've had, exactly, and some people are not going to make it. And I guarantee you, if we had frontline people going into the world championship now, and a bunch of second-tier people had signed with Turkey, we would not have this to deal with. We wouldn't be having this big blowout that we're having now and this major problem. I say that to say that we need to take care of our athletes, but we also need to allow to piggyback on your point, Richard, that we need to allow for our athletes to make the best deals for their careers and life.
Yeah.
That they can, wherever they can do it.
It's a maturity thing going on, Winston. I think a lot of us, we may be mature in terms of age, but not in thinking. And we need to come to terms with the reality that faces people on an everyday basis out there. No matter, you could have fast like the Flash, right? If you know, use that speed to secure and anchor your future, dog, nyam your supper, right? Because nobody now go, people will say, well, boy, remember so and so. But if you come and you think you're bad and come beg me a 5 cent or a $500 bill, man, I'll run you out of thing. When you used to run, you should have secured yourself. And at the end of the day, that's what we all have to do. We have to go leave it right there with that. That's been closing point as from it.
I am hoping that our athletes do well and are injury free. And I'm looking at some people that I would love to see do well at the World Championship in September. So I wish them the best, and I'm looking forward to trials this weekend to see where things play out.
Well, why don't we do this? When trials finish next weekend, let us revisit. Let's come back on this program the week after. Because there are some questions that I have, like Elaine Thompson era, is that the end of her, don't answer the question, right? And then, just the
Omar and Omar McLeod as well.
Yeah, we wanna take a look at that. We wanna look at what we're gonna have as the representation heading to the World Championships, and the expectation of in terms of Otto Bolden's argument, we're not picking up on it, but we want to look at what can Jamaica look forward to. I think that is going to be an interesting discussion, right?
Thank you very much, Richard.
Always a pleasure, my friend. It has been an interesting little discussion. I want to thank those participants on the outside, people on YouTube, people on Facebook, and everybody who took the time to join us, those who were just listening under the covers, but in particular, those who joined the discussion by posting their comments. Again, just want to remind, we're going to revisit this discussion 2 Saturdays from now, when we take a look at the setup for the World Championships after the Jamaican trials. All right.
Take care, man.
Yeah, respect. All right, folks. Well, so that's it. This evening's edition of the Jamaica Mix. Again, it has been a stimulating discussion. We took a look at the raiding of the bar by the Turks and the Bahrainians, because not only Turkey that is looking at our Jamaican athletes. Lessons to be learned. Have our administrators learned anything interesting, good development that people like Juliet Cuthbert, who is a former Olympian, 4 Olympics to our credit, and who shone at those Olympics, is also weighing in on this issue. Jamaica, we have come a long way after 70 odd years of being in track and field. What does the future hold? And so we're going to take a look at that when next we visit. Again, thanks for spending the time with us. Have yourselves a wonderful rest of the evening, the rest of your weekend. Enjoy. And tomorrow, join us for the Reggae Chronicles, where we take a 2-hour look at some of the people who have contributed to the thing. Yes, July 5th is the next show race. So thanks again for joining. Share with your friends. And while you're you're still with us, just check out our website at yardmedia.com. That's YAAWD. Interesting. There's a blog, lots of stuff that is on there that I'm pretty sure you will think. And I just want to thank you for your time that you spent with us this evening. Again, thanks to everybody who joined, and we catch you more time.